right, these were some baby sheep here that just got rescued. And I'm holding one back right now because he likes to headbutt. Ow! Okay, enough footage of these guys. Come here, Karma, say hi to the camera. All right, here's our turkeys. Here's our big Tom. Here, he'll talk to you. Ever since I was young, I was always rescuing animals. And when I met Casey, it just kind of was meant to be.
We met Tesla at a playground nearby. So brave. Yes, you are. And he was followed by a group of young boys who were chasing him, and they tried to drown him in the bathroom. I mean, you could see he's a very affectionate, very mellow individual most of the time, but if I were to try to hold him down, he would absolutely react out of fear and panic. They don't forget the way they've been treated. But rather than just not trust anyone ever again, it's like they've recognized that not all humans are the same. Animals are capable of recognizing us as individuals. And I think the greatest gift that we can give to them is to recognize them as individuals.
There are some people that have known this farm for generations in my husband's family, and they have a lot of questions. It's very difficult for them to understand what Jim is doing now.
Now the animals, we're just so attached to them, they're like part of us. We get to take care of them and really get to know them.
Crystal came from a working farm, very ill and carrying a calf. If we had not taken Crystal in, she would have gone to slaughter.
Chances are I found you now. I let you take and blindly break through.
She always waits for her treat every morning.
Falling for each other from the sky. You've got your language, I've got mine. But we understand the truth. These black roads tonight, tree bound and strange in my headlights, closing in the deeper on I go. Somewhere between a house and the road, I realize all I want is you.
The amount of courage it takes to examine the basic assumptions that you've carried since childhood and to question those, and then find that there is another way to be in the world, and then to follow that vision, that dream. It's really a joyous thing. It's going home.
My name is Howard Lyman. I'm a fourth-generation farmer, rancher, feedlot operator. And I travel around the world about 11 out of 12 months of the year, and I talk to people about the proper amount of animal products to have in their diet as being zero. People look at me and say, wait a minute, fourth-generation farmer, rancher, feedlot operator, talking about not eating animal products? You gotta be smoking the #1 crop out of California. Almost everything here, if you look out at this, was part of our ranch. This flat out here, I can tell you that I put up thousands of bales of hay.
Ever since I was a small boy, I always had the greatest love in the world of the land, of the animals, to get up in the morning and the dew on the grass and hear the birds singing. I thought it was the Garden of Eden, and the only thing I ever wanted to be in my entire life was a farmer. But I graduated from high school, and lo and behold, I found the farm was a business to be run, and I didn't have the tools to run a business. And so I decided to go to Montana State University and become an agribusinessman.
I returned to Great Falls after my first husband died with my 3 little children. And I met Howard, and that's all it took. We were just attracted to each other. And we were married 3 months later. I had no experience on the farm, and so I started from scratch. I learned how to swath, I picked rock, I branded cattle, I pulled calves, I shoveled grain. There isn't anything that I didn't do until finally I realized if I don't learn how to run the combine, then I won't have to do it.
And I took a small farm, and over a period of years, I turned it into an operation where I had 7,000 head of cattle, 12,000 acres of crop, 30 employees. Can't tell you what a thrill it was the first time I wrote a check for $1 million and it didn't bounce, and I thought I was on top of my game because I was doing what I loved, feeding a hungry world. On our farm, we bring the animals in from all over the state. And the first thing we do is we give them feed laced with antibiotics, because cattle coming from many different places, you'd have every disease you could think of. And if you didn't give them antibiotics every day, you'd end up with a lot of sick and dead animals. We take these animals, we give them 7 to 21 vaccines. Inject them with hormones, cut off their horns, castrate them.
At the beginning, there were times that I was uncomfortable with some of the things that we did with the cattle, such as branding the calves. That's difficult at first when you're not used to that. But the funny thing is, after you do it a while, it's just accepted. I remember one time when my son Mike, he was, just 5, maybe 6. I set him up on top of the corral, and we were branding the calves, and they were bellowing. And he was crying, and he said, "I feel so sorry for them, they're hurting." And I thought, he'll toughen up. And he did. And it's a sad thing when that happens, but it's your job, and you adjust to it, and you get hard to it.
I was taught as a child what I suppose every farm kid gets, is that they're there for our use. It's part of a natural cycle of birth and death, and they sustain us through that cycle. But there was something in the back of my mind that didn't make sense. It didn't feel right about it. Because we had pets too, we had dogs and cats. And I was very attached to my dogs. And it was like we were best buddies, did everything together. But the farm animals were different. And it was okay to feel bad about it. My mom taught me that. It was okay to feel bad about animals, killing animals to eat. But don't let it show. You don't let it show. You keep it inside.
Guys, I'm coming in.
Once you put out the intention that I'm going to provide a safe place for farm animals, it's inevitable that you're going to be witness to cruelty, and you're going to help with investigations just by means of what you're doing.
We ended up getting a phone call from one of the local humane officers, and she had told us to be on standby. They were going to go in and check out a place that they had gotten a call about.
All they knew was that somebody had reported seeing dead animals in the field close to the road, and it looked like a pretty neglectful situation. So the day that we went with them to serve the search warrant, none of us knew what to expect. Oh.
That's all bones down there, the whole hillside.
One of the first animals that we came upon was an adult sheep. And it was the most haunting image to see that this animal struggled to try to get up. She must have been doing it for days, because the sides of her legs actually dug these holes into the ground that were about 6 inches deep. And then she passed away.
This was our first real experience with animal hoarding. It would hit you when you'd walk up the driveway, the smell from that home. And it was so tragic. There were 30 dogs trapped inside. They never went outside. What does that look like, Jeff?
Cat? It's a cat.
It's an obsessive compulsive disorder that she thought that she was helping those animals. The woman who had the farm had inherited it from her father.
Okay, we got another goat. That's 2.
And she never wanted to send any of the animals to auction. There were sheep and goats living in her basement. She would get more animals every week. And it just got to a point where there's no possible way she could have fed them and made sure they had water. They were so dependent, especially when they're trapped and can't escape and try to forage for food on their own.
The veterinarian expressed concern that there were probably some really serious diseases and these were not healthy animals. And he said, boy, this is going to be difficult for the slaughterhouse to deal with. And I was just floored. I thought, you can't be serious that humane officers would take these animals into custody and then have to turn them over to just be killed. And how horrible is that for these animals who have the opportunity to escape this situation? So Jason and I made the decision right then and there that we were going to take them all. So then they said, you have, 48-hour period to get all of these animals out of here, because after that, the gates would lock and legally we could not set foot on that property again. And I remember realizing that, we couldn't go home and just go to bed that night, because 48 hours came really quickly. So by the next morning, we got anybody that had a horse trailer, anybody with a van, a car that they were willing to haul sheep in, and we made these little flyers that said, we need volunteers, and there were people from all over, and they said, we'd love to help. It was so beautiful to see all of these vehicles pulling into the sanctuary, and the minute the doors would open on those trailers, the animals saw that there were green pastures. They saw that their other friends had made it there before them, and some of them celebrated. You could tell that they were so excited. I just remember seeing some of them dance across the pasture to go rejoin their friends. Oh, she's looking for her babies. The humane officers thought they were doing us a favor, so the first morning when we got there, their crew of people had already come in, but what they did was so disruptive to the whole rescue.
There was a lot of babies separated from their moms.
Meanwhile, the mother's screaming for them. There was one we were noticing, she looked like any mother would look who was missing their child and knew that there was a possibility that she could be on that transport. And just kind of watching as the other lambs went past, just realizing, no, that's not my baby, that's not my baby.
Once she knew that her baby wasn't on that transport, she still just stayed there and would call out.
3 days after we got these adult sheep there, they were still crying. So we called every shelter in Western Pennsylvania trying to track down these lambs, and we got them all back. You would just hear one of the baby's voices, you know, crying, and then you'd hear off in the distance a mother answering, and then they'd run toward each other, and there'd be this beautiful reunion. That's Devlin.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's right. We brought Devlin, Malice, and Sparky down below, thinking that they must have mothers somewhere.
We didn't know what their situation was because we had found them in the basement. And we put them out in the field to try to see if they would go to any of the moms.
And they were they were trying so hard. They were walking up to all these sheep, and the sheep would just push them away.
You know, after a few hours, we realized once they saw us coming, they were just running. And, you know, we became their new parents. I think you can see his little horns starting.
Aww.
Devlin is the one with the horns, and Malice is the light colored one.
Devlin! Devlin, come on! Debbie! Come on, Dev! Devlin. Buddy. Come here, Malice. Malice, come here, Malice. Come here, baby. Hi. Someone's getting jealous.
We've had a lot of experience bottle feeding a lot of baby animals. And once they're weaned from the bottle, the relationship changes.
You like that right there, huh? It's a good itchy spot.
But there's just something about these two sheep that's never changed. And I don't know if it was because of the situation that we rescued them from. It was so horrific, they're just so grateful. We don't know what it is, but they just really want to connect.
He's so handsome. Ooh. And I always feel guilty leaving the barn because you could tell he doesn't want you to go. I want to walk in a straight line. Yeah.
My gosh.
There's two incidences that I can recall when I had a different feeling towards the animals. We had one hog that the kids just loved, and it was like a pet dog.
You tell them chickens you're the smartest animal on the farm, huh? You tell them you're the smartest animal? Yeah. I actually had one on my farm that used to come up to the house, stand on its back feet and open the door with its mouth and come in the house. Every time that hog, and we called it Piggo, every time it would come into the house, if my mother-in-law was there, she would leave. I never let anything happen to that hog. I had a very soft spot in my heart about that hog. I invited it up to the house often.
And that pig would come up and play with the kids, and I thought, this is unusual. It's not like the other hogs, but it's still a hog. And that sparked a thought in my mind about animals that was coming back that I had as a child but had lost. And then there was a calf in the feedlot that we had purchased from someone, and apparently it had been someone's pet. And that calf would come up to you every morning when you were feeding them and just want to be petted. And I said to Howard, this calf shouldn't die. The kids would really get attached to the animals, but they knew that they had to be sold.
I'd have friends that took livestock to county fairs. And I realized I wasn't alone, because even these kids too, they cried when they auctioned off their, prize cow at the end of the fair. So I thought, I'm not so weird, but you could never get anybody to talk about it. You never talked about how you felt about your animal. At least not when the tears are flowing. You could, when you're that young, you might say, yeah, I really like my cow, or my goat, or my sheep, or my hog. But that was it. You said it once, kept the stuff up her lip, and you moved on. I mean, the last thing you ever want to be is weak. Weak farmers don't survive. Slaughtering an animal, it takes something away from you. It made me physically ill the first time. Next time around, it was a little easier. Next time around, it was a little easier. To the point where I didn't feel anything at all. Hello there. How you guys doing?
You're pretty good, pretty tired. How are you doing?
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
Nice to meet you.
Yep.
We're just finishing up doing the horse stalls, although I got some question about a cow, if you can help with it.
I sure can. At least I'll try. Good girl.
We had spoken on the phone a few times, and he had expressed an interest in coming here.
We'll just take our time.
Harold, I think, appreciated it because of its history and all of the lives that went through here. And now it has changed its path, and it's more a place of healing.
Ugly, you're getting ready, aren't you? Yeah.
It's hard to get the weight on her.
Yeah. She's starting to lactate, though.
Yeah, it could be sooner than we think.
Yeah.
Dairy cows are sent to slaughter because they just don't produce enough. They either get too old, which really isn't that old. It can be 6, 7, 8 years old if they're lucky.
Her udder doesn't feel too bad to me.
Or they've gotten mastitis because they've produced so much they just wear out.
I would just call the cattle dealer, and he would come with his truck or trailer and look at the cow and say, I'll give you so much. He'd write out a check, and we'd load them on, off it would go. Or sometimes I would buy another one from him, and first I'd go to his barn and look at the ones he had for replacements, and he would bring that one. It was like a used car, sort of. Same thing. Trade one in for another. I knew where they're going, and I know that, but I didn't see any of it. There was always plenty to do in the farm. The trailer would drive out, I'd go feed some more calves or something.
As a kid going to stockyards, it was always a exciting thing to do. Because that was the opportunity to go and hang out with other farmers, and it was an energy-filled event. But as I got older, it was something that I really didn't care too much about going to. And when I go now, I understand why it bothered me.
When Jim and I first met, I was interested in the dairy business.
Well, she was milking a few goats before she even came to the farm, just because she loved the goats. And if she didn't sell the milk, I would go over every afternoon with my milk bucket and bring it back to feed my calves.
I loved the calves, and I would ask about where they would go because they would just disappear.
You've got to keep a dairy cow pregnant to have her produce milk. She can't lactate unless she's pregnant. So as soon as she has her calf, you take the calf away because you need the milk for production.
He would explain to me every year it's at least one calf per cow, and they're either sent to slaughter immediately or they're sent to veal operations, which is a very short life.
Once the auction starts, there's a chute and there's a scale in there that weighs them. They are looking to build up a total weight package, or what they call kill packages. And then a lot of these calves go to slaughter just a few days after birth. You know, many of them with their umbilical cords still hanging. And they're slaughtered to make cheap veal, which goes into, cheap meals, or in particularly to dog food and cat foods. Plus their hides are very valuable for high-end leather, very supple leather for gloves and so on. Then their stomachs are scraped for rennet, and that's the enzyme that curdles cheese in the making of cheese.
I would explain how I felt bad for the animals and isn't there any other alternative? And he said, that's the farming industry, that's how it is. And I would have to start accepting that with my goats.
It's a money-driven industry. The bottom line is economics.
And my heart hurt because I loved animals so, but I tried to deal with it intellectually because that's society. That's what I grew up with as far as, well, there's meat on the table and that's where the meat came from. And I thought, well, perhaps this is an alternative. I could have the animals and I could have the milk and the babies could go for pets. And eventually we got married and I moved the goats over.
It's just like milking a miniature cow, same thing.
So the dairy cows got phased out and we got into the dairy goats. Every late winter, the goats would give birth. So when we would take the babies from the mom, that was very difficult because the mother cries. And it usually takes several days for the mother goat to settle down and just accept the fact that her babies are gone. And the baby goats bond to the people that are taking care of them. There you go. You teach them to suckle from an artificial nipple, and their little tails would be wagging, and they'd finish that. Okay, that's enough. That's enough. And then they'd want attention, and they'd want to play.
He's a good boy. He's a good boy.
When you leave them,
I'll be back. I know, I'll be back.
they would become anxious and cry. Looking into their eyes, they would look back with this obvious trust.
I got attached to them a lot. Maybe it was because I was older or something, I don't know what it was, but I got attached to them a lot.
Oh. Come on, Mom. Come on.
Some we would even name and stuff, and we shouldn't have. They were like our little kids almost.
For a long time in my life, I've always claimed to be a great animal lover. Even when I had 7,000 head of cattle, and I used to say to people, I love my animals. Nobody cares more about their animals than I do, because my future, my economic future of my family depend on how good I take care of those animals.
Oh, as we got bigger, it was more difficult to think about the moral issues. You can't see the big picture. All you can see is what's in front of you, the chores for the day, the animals to take care of, the crop that has to be put in. And what you do is you just continuously get in deeper and deeper.
I remember the first time that Sherry called. She had gotten to a point where they just could no longer do it.
Ooh, treats. Treats. Sometimes you might be able to sell a pet or two here and there, but I couldn't possibly make enough money from the amount of milk that I was producing and then have the babies go for pets.
At times we'd have up to 100 of them at a time, so.
And then there were customers that wanted goats for their traditional meals.
That's the way she bought a pasteurizer and several other things, which are big investments. Pasteurizer is like 7,000.
So we would sell them on the hoof. The goat customer usually comes and selects a baby goat according to how the baby goat feels. They check the neck and they check the back for meat and they check the chest. And when they've selected the goat that they want, then they ask me to weigh the goat. It was during the selling of the goats that we began having these deep feelings of this just wasn't right, because these animals that we were so close to, suddenly they would be flipped on their back and hog-tied.
As soon as they start tying their legs together, the goat starts screaming and his tongue's out and he's looking at us. And the guy just picks him up like a piece of luggage or a toolbox and carries him to his car or truck. But when Sherry's there, Sherry's always say, be gentle, and they would put him in gentle. But a couple of times when Sherry wasn't around, the guy would take him and just throw him in the back of it like a piece of wood or something. Drive out and they're screaming. And I'm sure when I had calves and stuff, they kind of went through the same thing in a way, but I was disconnected from it, so it didn't affect me.
There was one goat that we had, and I thought I had to get rid of him because he's a boy, and I didn't want to. And we called the livestock dealer, and he said he could pick him up that afternoon, and he came up, and Jim helped load the goat onto the truck. And I looked into the goat's eyes, and he was, I would consider him a teenager. He wasn't a little baby, but he was growing up. And I looked into his eyes, and he was petrified. And he splayed his legs out, and he was shaking, and the whole back of the truck was shaking because of his fear. And even after I had asked the livestock dealer to please treat him gently because he's such a sweet goat, he began swearing at him and pushing him into the small compartment to push him away. And I had to walk away. To this day, I'll never forgive myself for sending that goat away.
People ask me, how on earth could you have ever done that? And it's really hard, it's a very hard question to answer. How do you do it? How do you, kill an animal? How do you find it within yourself to kill it and butcher it? As time went by, you just realized that you needed to keep a certain amount of distance emotionally. So you trained yourself. It was a discipline like anything else, an emotional discipline.
Sherry said she and Jim would stand at the end of their driveway each time this would happen and somehow try to get through it, believing that they had to, believing that if they wanted to keep their land, if they wanted to keep these animals, that was somehow a necessary trade-off.
We didn't like it at all. We just knew it wasn't right, for us anyway.
Okay, sweetie, come on. Come on. We didn't want any more animals to die. And the only answer to that was not to continue to have the babies, not to continue to milk the goats.
But she had 63 goats at the time, and she realized that without selling their byproducts or selling them for meat, she couldn't afford to take care of them. She said, I'm going to be forced into selling them all to slaughter, to shut down.
We had to find an alternative. And Casey and Jason said, don't worry, you're doing the right thing. We'll help. Who is this? This is Pudge's little boy, neutered little boy.
Come on, take a vow to not forget her face.
Here they come, here they come!
Again! This is how it was meant to be. Come on, take a vow.
The goats from Sherry's quickly adjusted to being here, and some of their mothers, I think, had just kind of shut down and probably not accepted, but gotten very, very used to having their babies taken from them. So for the first time here, they were able to keep them by their sides, and some of them we kind of helped to adjust to that. We would sit there and calm them and hold them, and we'd let the babies come closer till eventually she would let them nurse.
The customers keep coming and bugging us all the time, still wanting the goats and us not having them, and we tried to explain it to a few of the people, but most of them just don't understand. It was just a piece of meat to them, and that was it. The only real other farmer we talked to was another dairy farmer, and he kind of just shunned me away. I thought he was my friend, but I don't think he was.
It's kind of sad and empty sometimes when people are looking at your belief system and passing judgment on you and just disappearing from your life.
make that change and then try to interact with those people that are a part of that life, of farming life. The community can turn their back on you, but it's also finding your new community.
We learned an awful lot from them about caring for the animals, not the way we were, not taking care of them to raise them, but caring for them the way we wanted to care for them, with our heart.
Come on, ducks, let's go. They're getting excited about the pool. They can't wait. Let's put their steps here because they're not too good at getting in the pool. They need their stairs. There you go. Yeah, now they're happy. We love it.
To have this deep feeling that they're sentient beings and they're no longer this commodity that you make money from was such a turnaround. And we decided we were going to really try to understand the lives of these animals.
Look at little chick.
Like the chicken with her chick. If they're allowed to raise the babies up, there's that evidence of nurturing where the mother teaches her baby to scratch. And when there's a tasty morsel, she'll cluck to the baby. And the baby will come over and start eating. I'll sometimes feed canned corn to the chickens and the ducks, and they love the canned corn. And the mother hen won't eat it. She'll pick it up and she'll drop it, and then the baby will come over and she'll consume it, and then kind of peek back in her little way. The baby will cuddle up to mom, will go under the feathers and just kind of peek out at the world and learn from mom and become a part of the flock. And if there's any sign of danger, the baby will go right underneath the mother, and the mother will always protect the baby. And it just goes on day in and day out as the baby grows. It's not like the farm where the eggs are artificially hatched out. So the mother never sees the chick never sees the mother. And the chicks are then sorted. As egg layers, the females are kept. But the male chicks are not allowed to grow up. They hatch out and they're disposed of.
I do hundreds, thousands of radio shows. I do debates with cattlemen. I have never debated a cattleman yet that I didn't feed more cattle than he had fed, that I had baled more hay, I'd been in more blizzards, I'd pulled more calves, I'd sewn up more prolapses. And when they say to me, "But you don't understand," I say to them, "What is it that I don't understand?"
I loved agriculture. I loved working hard. I loved being around the animals, and I really felt that I was doing the best for them. I was doing the new modern agriculture, using the chemicals, bringing Mother Nature to heal. On our feedlot, I've seen the flies so bad that you could reach out and grab them and end up with a handful of them. And so we would get up early in the morning when there was dew in the air, and we'd take a fogger with insecticides and drive up and down the feed alleys with a great fog of insecticide that would go out and would drift over the cattle and over the water troughs and over the bunks. 2 hours later, we'd fill those feed bunks up. Cattle would go, eat them, lick the troughs, go to the water troughs and drink them. These were the things that I learned at Montana State University. These are the things that I thought were correct. But in the back of my mind, I kept seeing the birds die, the trees die, the soil change, and I couldn't bring myself to believe that even though I was buying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of chemicals, that I was responsible.
And I can remember pouring those chemicals, into the sprayer, and the sprayer, going all over, and Howard, the nozzles would be clogged up, and so he would take the nozzle off and blow it out with his mouth.
And my brother died 29 years old. I believe today he died from the chemicals we were using on that farm.
At the time it was happening, I don't think any of us made the connection. That came much later. I think we were so overwhelmed with not only losing him, but keeping the farm going, that we didn't even stop to think that where maybe this cancer had come from. It was only years later when Howard admitted he was having a problem, and I would watch him walk across the yard and he'd trip. And I'd say to him, "You're awfully clumsy, what's wrong?" And of course he wouldn't say anything for the longest time, and this went on for weeks. Finally one day he said, "I don't think I can feel my legs."
Now, it takes quite a rap on the head to get your attention, and I'll tell you, to be paralyzed from the waist down, that gets your attention. And here I am in the hospital where the doctor's telling me I've got 1 chance in a million I'll ever walk again.
And it just shows you how quickly your life can change. Your feelings, your thoughts, your beliefs, what's important to you can change in a day.
Human beings and other animal beings, we all crave security and happiness and health. It's just that simple.
Hi. Oh, handsome Tesla. Hi, baby.
But it wasn't too long ago that people who were compassionate toward even dogs and cats were thought of as being fanatical, extremists. And it was very clear to me that most humane officers really didn't know what could be done to help farm animals. And some of them, quite honestly, never gave it a thought. Those animals just weren't to be helped. We had just by then encountered so many situations where it would have been so beneficial to the animals to have a law enforcement officer really on their side and looking out for their best interest in a situation. So I decided to enroll in the training. Part of the humane officer training, it was well intended. They wanted to show us what was legal so that we wouldn't go out and start trying to hand citations to every farmer out there, because I think most of us would if we saw what they're doing to these animals. Normal agricultural practice is guaranteed under the law. That's protected. So farmed animals are tail docked, they're castrated without anesthesia or pain medication. They're subjected to some of the most egregious forms of cruelty I've ever witnessed, but yet it's excused and protected because it's considered standard agricultural procedure. So here are the few people who will be empowered with the ability to protect farmed animals. And, you know, they're being told that this is actually okay. For instance, the egg industry decided to start debeaking because they knew that if they crammed these chickens inside facilities where all that lay ahead of them was a lifetime of confinement, they would go crazy. They would be desperate for a way out. Even if they're not packed into cages, they are still living in stressful conditions. And they would fight amongst themselves. They would trample one another, essentially damaging merchandise. So they decided to start mutilating their beaks to protect their investment. Violence is such a part of that environment that it contributes to the desensitization. We did a rescue one time at an egg industry that had been hit by a tornado. 12 of their 150 warehouses had been demolished. We found out that it would cost the egg farm more money to salvage the birds and move them to other buildings than it would if they just killed them all. Initially, somebody had suggested just burning the buildings with the chickens still inside. And the only reason they were being spared the fate of being burned to death was the fact that there was PVC conduit running through the buildings and it would be deemed an environmental hazard to burn them. So they had decided to dispose of the birds by putting them into the buckets of the front loader. They were then dumped into the dumpster. The dumpster was tarped. And then they would pump carbon dioxide into the dumpster and kill all the birds. So the whole time we were there, rescuing the small numbers that we were able to take in our vans, each dumpster, they could put 10,000 birds in at a time and gas them. To them, these birds were like inanimate objects. It was almost like this could have been a shoe factory, you know, hauling pairs of shoes and throwing them away.
If I put this in, I don't want to dilute it with fluids, so we'll do Pepto-Bismol, Banamine, and penicillin. So in about a half an hour, I'll dose her with the Improlium powder. Okay, I'm sorry, sweetie, but hopefully this is going to help a little. It's sweet and it's what a good girl.
I run into people who feel that there's got to be a better way with, you know, the small family farm or humanely raised. The thing is what is humane? You know, it means to be treated with respect. I mean, when we talk about humane treatment of other people, what does that mean? Now that means that we treat these people with respect, with consideration, with, regarding their basic rights as human beings. So when we apply this to animals, then why aren't we using the same parameters?
Humane farming is a myth. When you see the Happy Cow logo or you see certified organic, there is no federal mandate that guarantees that that animal has lived a wonderful, happy, healthy life.
The last time I looked at the dictionary, the definition for humane was framed by 3 words, which is compassion, kindness, and mercy.
I've been to the most humane farms that are out there, And they still have the same ultimate destination that every farmed animal has. They're all going to slaughter. They will all one day end up in a kill line. And at some point, somebody's going to decide that today is the day you're going to die.
I'm in the hospital and I'm flat on my back and I cannot feel the foot of the bed. Odds of 1 in a million? I knew they were saying, pick out your wheelchair, you're going to be in it.
And they did discover that he had a tumor, and the tumor was on the inside of his spinal cord. And there was such a slim chance that they could ever get it out.
I have 7 combines at $100,000 apiece, 20 tractors, 30 trucks, 7,000 head of cattle. You know, I'm Mr. Agribusiness, and none of it makes any difference because I can't walk.
I've been so frustrated going to stockyards and seeing these animals who have been through such abuses during the transporting process that they arrive in such a weakened condition that they can't even stand. Because the law is designed to protect farmers, I'm not allowed to go and take care of that animal. It's treated much in the same way that, you know, if a car is broken down on the side of the road, I can't go and fix it. You know, I can't go touch that car because that's somebody else's property. And a lot of times, they're just left there to die. That just breaks my heart when I find them in the back alleys of these stockyards and they're just forgotten. I really thought that getting a badge, getting a uniform, getting a title of a police officer would allow me to do so much good. But it's very hard to protect animals that people view as commodities.
I went into the operating room and they operated on me for 12 hours. Took a tumor out, the size of my thumb. I walked down to the hospital with a 1 in a million operation.
The recuperation took a long time. I can remember he spent a lot of time by himself, quiet, like he was thinking.
When I woke up in the recovery room, I can't roll over, I can't move. All I can do is look straight ahead, and the person that was in the bed next to me was dying of kidney failure. And all day, there I am with this great euphoric feeling because I can feel the foot of the bed, and I saw the life go out of that individual a little bit at a time throughout that day. It's a sight that's in my mind that I will never forget. And I never again in my life wanted to be involved in something that took the life out of anything.
When we started the humane officer training, we were just told that we were to meet at this specific building on the agricultural part of the campus. So I remember the first day in class hearing what I thought was a classroom above us. And we were in the basement, and I heard the sounds of like people shuffling to their seats and getting settled at their class. And it reminded me of high school, you know, hearing a classroom above you. And then I heard the sound of machinery. And a little while after that, I heard a truck pull up. And when we broke for lunch that day, I went around behind the building and I saw a loading ramp. And I realized that we were in the basement of a slaughterhouse. those sounds I was hearing above me were not the sounds of human feet shuffling across the floor, but they were the sound of hooves. And my heart just stopped.
I can't imagine what goes through their mind. You can see the fear and the question of the abandonment.
So many things raced through my mind. You know, I really thought something had to be done. You know, I could document this somehow. I could get a camera. I could expose this. But then I thought, you know, it's really not going to prevent these deaths. And I wanted to run at that moment. And I just thought, I cannot stay here. But then something just came over me, and I said, perhaps the greatest thing I could do is be strong enough to walk in there and put my emotions aside and my fears, and maybe just for 1 minute be able to look into their eyes and be a witness to that.
I watched it once, and I made myself watch it so I would understand what they went through.
It was tough for me to actually verbalize something that I had locked out of my mind for years and years. I've been in hundreds of slaughterhouses. I've seen thousands of animals die. I knew, looking at those animals, they knew they were going to die. They saw what happened to the animal in front of them. They smelled the death that is there. Is there a need for that?
이거보다 가르쳐 고치 가르쳐. help.
I really feel like a big part of me died that day, died with them. When people talk about humane slaughter, there's no such thing. There's no polite way to take somebody's life. There's no gentle way to kill anybody.
Jim watched also at one point, and we just couldn't believe that we were allowing that to happen. That was a part of our life.
That was right near the end. We never should let anybody do it at all. So. But maybe that's what opened my eyes.
It's like you innately know that this is not right. Otherwise, I wouldn't feel so bad about it. I wouldn't feel so sad. And if it was righteous, if it was a truly good thing, then it would be a joyful thing. But I've never known anybody who slaughters animals that finds it as a joyful thing. But it's part of my interior life. You know, the pictures will always be there, the smells will always be there, you know, the sadness will always be there.
Howard often says he's probably sent more animals to their death than anyone that's in his audience, and that's very true. And I'm sure he's trying to make up for that.
What do you think, Lazarus, huh? You want to put up with me, huh? You want to put up with me, huh? Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
After the training, and especially after visiting the slaughterhouse, coming back here was very therapeutic. Randy! There's my friend. I've missed you.
We have so many faces to put with those products that are in those grocery stores.
I usually get him to relax sideways when I hold him. You want to settle down?
It's so hard seeing that to most people, yeah, they are 29 cents a pound. And to me, that's a sacred life, and that's a friend.
Being a former animal farmer, well, to be quite honest, you know, at times you don't feel that you're worthy of forgiveness for the things you've done. And that might be the reason that you keep your distance. But in traveling and visiting sanctuaries, I ran into a Guernsey steer named Snickers. And when I saw him, he was kind of skittish. He wasn't used to being around people. But he finally came up to me and I fed him some apples and we kind of hit it off, and I thought, this is great. I just thought, this is not like any experience I've ever had on a farm or around cows. And it gave me something to think about. And it wasn't until a year later that it came back, and that's when it happened. All the cows were up in the barn, and Snickers was over in the far corner, and of course it's been about a year since I'd seen him. So I walk about halfway to him, and I look at him, and I say, Snickers, and I put out my arms, and it was unbelievable. He ran over to me, as much as a cow can run. He runs over to me, and he puts his head right in my chest. He just thumps me right in the chest with his forehead. And he just stands there leaning against me. And I just wrap my arms around his neck. And it was... I'm sorry. I think that he knew just where to hit me. Because after he thumped me in the chest, it was like he hit me right in the heart. And I knew right then that that's exactly what I'd shut off ever since I was a kid. I had this image in my head. The image was this big light switch right here. And that light switch had been off. And when he bumped me in the chest and just stayed there, I realized that I had developed this capacity as a kid to either turn it on or off. I could turn it on for my dog. I could turn it on for the people in my circle of compassion. And now I realized how I was able to do that. To abuse animals at times when I lived on a farm, to kill them, to slaughter them, to eat them. I was just able to turn that off. And that's when my life turned around. Big time, big time.
Good, what's good, what's good, what's Come on, girls!
Crystal lasted long enough to deliver her baby, but she was so horribly weak. I just wish her mom could have lived, but she'll be living out her days in peace and a loving and happy environment.
Tyler was the first goat that we sent back to Sherry, and now we're going to send back several other goats, and I think that's so poetic.
We have this short period of time to do something with our life, do something positive and make a change.
And that's why we became a sanctuary. We want everybody to know what we did and how we live.
It kind of all fits together. We can protect the wildlife and the land, and plus the farm animals that we bring in. It's all like one big circle. Fits in good.
Hello, Gilbert. I don't think it's a question of whether or not we're greater or more intelligent. We're just different. We just speak different languages. We just look different. And I think that in our evolution, we've recognized that our differences don't entitle us to domination.
We are here, in my opinion, as Homo sapiens on this planet to learn one thing. And that one thing is unconditional love. Not unconditional love just for humans, not unconditional love just for the environment, but unconditional love for our entire community on this planet.
That takes courage to take a step outside of the box and say, we have done this. We see this as not being consistent with our core values and our true emotional selves, and we're not going to do it anymore. And we're going to educate and do whatever we can to be an example.
I was standing by. You were down and you had fallen in an alleyway forgotten. Where are the souls behind the faces of those who let these sad disgraces happen?
hear them. They'll be up pretty soon.